G'day Noobers, Shrek here. Today it's a controversial subject. We're talking about the Netflix documentary Seaspiracy. If you haven't seen it already, by all means go and do so. The documentary does have a lot of good points. However, from a Spearos perspective, I couldn't help but be a little bit negative in today's episode. This conversation was partially spurred on by the Noob Spearo community on Facebook. Ben Vatina opened conversation by saying, "Hey Noobers, has anyone else watched Seaspiracy? I watched it tonight. Certainly some eye-opening stuff for me. Reaffirms a lot of what made me want to start catching my own food in the first place. What did you think?" And had a very vibrant conversation on the Noob Spearo community about it. Justin Townsend said, "I watched it and agree 100% with you. I harvest my own fish and game meat. I wish they would have hit on the importance of recreational fishing for food instead of choosing commercial seafood." And a lot of comments about vegan propaganda. Antonio Cardial said a lot of info coming out to the general public about, you know, the agendas behind some of the stuff. He has concerns about the MSC and Blue Label Dolphin Safe basically being a marketing strategy, and Seaspiracy hits on that well. He says, "My biggest problem with the film are the cringy and over-the-top acting, the misinformation and conflicts of interest that they talk so much about, but they themselves are involved with their vegan industry stakes in it, basically." And lots of good points here. And anyway, so today I'm joined by Jon from Casting the Spear Podcast and Bret Whitman from Spearfactor. And we have a good old time approaching, you know, what could be perceived as a largely negative influence on the spearfishing world. And because I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Have a good chat. We try not to get too negative. We try to talk about the good and bad things about the documentary, but have that conversation in a more free-form way. But obviously all three of us are Spearos, and I'd encourage you to check out the other guys' podcasts as well. So Jon at Casting the Spear and Bret Whitman at Spearfactor both have their own unique takes on the world of spearfishing, and I enjoyed chatting with them today. So before we get there, a couple of quick shout-outs. If you haven't already, go to Old Man Blue Dive on Instagram and write your name down to help them name their lobster catch bag. It's a fantastic bit of kit, and all he's looking for is a good name. Now, the top 3 entries will all receive prize packs. So Old Man Blue Dive on Instagram, or go to oldmanblue.com.au and take a look there at the competition as well. I also wanted to make mention of Noober Stories section in the noobspearo.com menu. Basically, any Noober listener can leave me a voice message. You can write a review for the podcast. You can do a product review. You can tell me about a scary story, anything you like. Wanted to quickly just play a voice message from Jody. Check it out. Have a listen to Jody. She's full of froth and stoke. Loved it.
Hey, Shrek, Jodes here. Just wanted to let you know, mate, I did a free dive course last weekend after hearing you bang on about it forever, and it was the best. I seriously learnt so much good stuff. I feel like my technique now is way better. I had the confidence to try some really nice deep dives, having professionals there next to you. That was really cool. And I went spearing yesterday, and all the skills that I've learnt definitely translated to that. I had an awesome time and just felt like everything was smoother, like I just leveled up. I think it'd be a really good thing to do, like with your dive group. That'd be super cool. Practicing rescues and stuff like that too was just awesome information. I feel way better kitted out just in case something ever happens out in the water. So yeah, thanks for banging on about that. I definitely have those tools now in the tool bag, and yeah, I feel like I'm a better Spearo for it. Anyway, see you, mate.
So thanks, Jodes, for the voice message. Always welcome. Last quick shout out before we get into Spearos on Seaspiracy. The Blue Water World Cup. So Spearfishing Championships held in Palapa Ventana, Baja California Sur in Mexico, June 22 to June 26. Check it out. Super cool competition. Tons of legendary Spearos. If you're ever in a part of the world where you have an opportunity to go and take part in a spearfishing competition, I would encourage you to do so. The Blue Water World Cup ticks a lot of boxes in terms of not only the prizes and brands to get behind it, but in terms of the fishing that's available and the community aspect of it as well. So Palapa Ventana, check it out, the Blue Water World Cup. All right, let's get into Spearos on Seaspiracy. Today's Noob Spearo Podcast is proudly brought to you in partnership with Adreno Spearfishing Supplies. For your next piece of spearfishing equipment, head to adreno.com.au. Flat rate shipping Australia-wide, huge range of gear. Save $20 on every purchase over $200 when you use the code Spearo. Better yet, drop into their Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne or Perth megastores. Use the code Spearo to save online or in store. Check it out, adreno.com.au. Today's Spearo podcast is brought to you by Neptonics.com. For US divers, Neptonics is the one-stop shop for all of your spearfishing essentials. They got free shipping on every order over $99. Now you can use the Noob10 code to save 10% off anything and everything store-wide. 10% off store-wide. Use the code Noob10 at Neptonics.com. Boom.
I try to take a common sense approach to it. I'm not a scientist, nor do I pretend to be, but when I see statistics like 99% of scalp hammerheads are gone, I kind of throw up the bullshit flag on that one. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
86% of bull sharks are gone as well. Yeah. With that note, well, let's kick this thing off. So yeah. I'm joined by Bret Whitman from Spearfactor Podcast. I've been following along on Bret's journey since he started his show, and very much enjoying it and his evolution as a podcast host. I just think he's growing from strength to strength. And if you haven't already done so, tune into Spearfactor. But Bret, who else is joining us?
First, thanks, Shrek. I appreciate it. And I can't thank you enough again for all the support. Like, you've been a huge help and inspiration, to be honest with you. We have Mr. Jon Stenstrom from Cast and Spear. He's got a podcast too. And he's got one hell of a website where there's more information on it, I think, than you could ask for on fishing and diving. I think that's what makes Jon a little unique, because he kind of covers everything.
Hey, man, thanks for the introduction. Appreciate it. We also have the man, the myth, the legend, Shrek, the best spearfishing podcast host, book author, you name it. This guy is a legend. And thank you for the invite, man. Really do appreciate it. You've been a big inspiration, and I love listening to your podcast and learning a whole bunch of things.
Cheers, fellas. I like both of your work. Jon, I just wanted to jet one of your videos recently, that tourniquet video you did with the jiu-jitsu fella. That was awesome. Really put some wheels on. I did a podcast with Eric Anderson a little while ago, and we talked a lot about tourniquet, and I was like, wow, we really need a video showing how to do it. And your video is just nuts and bolts, 100% practical, like really well put together. I really enjoyed it. And I actually linked it up in the comments to, some of them, like my videos, because it's like, I really want people to see actually how to do it, not just like have the idea of, using it. So
appreciate that. Yeah. My buddy, Dan, he's just an amazing guy. He actually let me shadow him one night at the ER here in LA County. And I mean, I'm impressed that this guy can do that stuff on the daily. And once I had talked to him about, like, hey, we do a pretty dangerous activity. It doesn't have to be dangerous, but if we just knew a little bit better, we'll probably be a little safer. And he's like, dude, minimum know how to do a tourniquet. So I'm like trying to pull as much knowledge as I can out of that guy's brain and share it with the community as possible.
Cool. All right, fellas. So we're here. We're going to chat about Seaspiracy. All three of us have had, I'd say, very colourful reactions to watching it. I've seen it twice now, or the second time I kind of skimmed it. But if you watch it with other Spearos too, it's like you just find yourself pausing it and then having these like big discussions about some of the facts and some of the ideas that are presented in the documentary. I had some good fit thoughts towards Seaspiracy, but I'll be honest with you, I completely disagreed with the conclusions of the documentary. I'll say that up front. And if I offend people today, I'm going to do that anyway. And that'll be like every other podcast I do where I normally offend someone. So, but Bret, what were your initial sort of thoughts?
Likewise, originally it started out like most documentaries about fishing, and addressed, an issue, commercial fishing, which is an issue. 100% agree with them on that. Where they kind of lost me was it was pretty obvious that there were handpicking data. And the only reason why I say that is because, like I had mentioned before, about 99% of scalloped hammerheads were, gone, and 86%, whatever it was, the bull sharks. And I mean, I don't know how you get it. Number one, I don't know how you would get an accurate measurement of that, especially being that we've only been doing these studies for, we don't have a baseline or a control group, if you will. Yeah, and that's kind of the common sense approach I say to it. But the thing is, it's like a teenager when they lie to you It's like, it's not so much what you did. It's like, you lie to me and now I don't know if I can trust you. So as soon as I sense something like that, I'm like, oh, it's out the window, which is unfortunate because I think they really have good intentions and they're trying to do the right thing. Yeah. Another thing too, when I think the gentleman, I don't remember his name, the guy doing it, he was saying he was 22 when he started it. Right. Mm. And this is kind of goes to being older or whatever, grumpier, I don't know what you want to call it. But I remember how narrow-minded I was at 22. Yep. And you could take everything with face value. And the reason why was because it was the first time you were getting a glimpse at the real world. So whoever you were getting the data from was shaping your whole perception because you don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, I think that I relate to that. I think, we're coming, when you sort of become into adulthood, it's like a lot of the rosy tinted glasses come off and you see a lot of the things about human nature and the world we live in. And there's this reaction and you see it like with a lot of young people, like, for sure, I was one of them. And there's this dawning of reality. Like, it's not all, Disneyland. We're not living in Disneyland. It's like there's a reality to life. Things die so that you can live, and yeah, I agree with you. I like that too. Ali is the creator's name. He's from Kent. So, but yeah, Jon, what about you, man?
This one's a good one. I'll try to play devil's advocate as best as possible. But like my initial reactions of it was that it's a piece of propaganda. It had a very simplified message in a way that they outlooked on the world. I kind of come from that background where it's like before I even went spearfishing or hunting, I kind of had a way of looking at the world. But then as soon as you kind of get into the community, you understand conservation and things like that. It's like, oh, wow, it's a more complex system out there than, being a binary, it's either good or bad. I think they're in the war of ideas and influence. So for them, I think there was a blog post or a Facebook message by the head of Seaspiracy who he just outlined exactly. It's like, this is a piece of propaganda. That's why we made it. Like we have a view of the world that we're trying to influence a large number of people who don't really necessarily need to have absolute truth. They just need to be kind of shown a story, this was an excellent story, for how they kind of framed it up to get people to feel a certain way. And then, no more fishing, or we don't want you to, humans aren't the best thing on this planet. We should like back off. So I don't know. It was kind of just like, there's a pretty big agenda there that I kind of was like, do we want to fight this with facts or do we want to look at it what it is? It's a story to influence people to do something at scale in a certain direction. Does that even make sense? Sorry. I looked at it as a different.
No, it does. I think to try and address like a 90-minute plus documentary and a 60-second cute little introduction is a difficult task. And our reactions to it are complex. And I kind of agree with you. Like, do you want to confront the ideology behind the creator, which is kind of what Bret sort of said? Like, he was 22. His worldview was shaped by, this life stage that he was in, as well as like probably current, beliefs about the world and political parties and all the rest of it. And it seems like he very much had a green agenda, like a vegan agenda. And I think that it was designed deliberately to get severe reaction from people. I can't see anyone that eats a quantity of fish not having a serious opinion about it. And people should be intentional and understand what they're eating and hunting and catching and stuff anyway. So if it does nothing else but that, then maybe it's good. It has had some sort of positive impact. Bret?
Well, I think, yeah, kind of along those lines too. I think the message and what they're trying to do is good. They mean well, right? So it's like, but we all have different ways. And this happens with so many issues across all political parties or whatever it is. Everybody means well, but they all have a different means to get to that point, right? And then they all fight about that point, but without realizing that I really think that, the documentary was based on, the motivation was exactly what Jon said. It's a piece of propaganda. And I love the fact that he owned it, right? Like, it is a piece of propaganda. Okay, cool. But I think there's enough good stuff, real facts, that you don't even have to, it is, nothing in this world to me is black and white. There's a lot of gray area. But if you can pinpoint things and know what you can tackle rather than try to go for this whole thing, if you can win one battle at a time and win the war, rather than make blanket statements, you do lose people. But, to their point is that you're going to get people. You're going to get especially younger kids, younger guys, girls, whoever, and they're going to be aware of it. And you might get a few of those because they'll take it for face value. It's the same thing for me. It's kind of personal because the documentary Blackfish, like I know Rick O'Berry from what he did at our program where he cut the nets and whatever. And it's like the other side to it is some of these activists, it is about money. Yeah. Because if they weren't doing that, like they have to have, conservation, it is a business. Oh, you do make money. Yeah. I mean, look at when I went to the zoo and I take my kids to the San Diego Zoo and you look at every animal on there is on a threatened species thing or whatever it is. And it could be a pigeon and it's like threatened. And it's funny because it's like, that if it's threatened, then there's going to be conservation, which means there's going to be money behind it. And that does create a lot of jobs. And I do, again, think that the goal behind it is, for the most part, I think for a lot of people, even, when I was training animals for the Navy, it's like we all care about these animals and that's why we're here. There are, however, the big driving force is money, because if we get money, then we can help them even further. So they might bend the rules a little bit. They might sell a different message just to get, more people talking and more funds generated to support it. I do think in the documentary, which I didn't like, was it seemed like they were like dog eat dog. They started turning on, people that were trying to do good, like with a gentleman with the Earth program when he was
my problem's bigger than your problem. Like, right. Why aren't you solving my problem? My problem's more important than your problem.
Yeah, and he wanted a guarantee. And it goes back to that black and white thing. You can't guarantee anything. People do get paid off. And I appreciate the fact that gentleman was being 100% honest and saying, I can't guarantee everything, but I'm here in Point Loma, which is a huge Portuguese fishing community. And my neighbors are all Portuguese fishermen and they tell stories. And I know from talking to them, like, they're not trying to catch dolphins. That's a pain in the ass. They don't want to deal with that, And unfortunately, that does happen sometimes. There's
a lot of ivory tower thinking too. I mean, what was your take on it, on Jon, on particularly on I don't know, this high-mindedness, like the simple idea that don't eat seafood, don't eat fish was the conclusion of the entire documentary. How did you feel about that?
Well, I think the message was simple, right? I think the documentary was really good at being polarizing because they made that documentary for a certain set of people, not really critical thinking people. So I think that is a brilliance in marketing for sure. It's like that gave you like something that the masses could understand. Don't do this, it's bad, right? So I just think that's horrible because that message wasn't coming from the communities that actually really need to eat fish to survive. That's not a Western culture, that's like everybody else outside of first world countries, they're the ones in small villages around the world who need to eat fish. They weren't even like, nobody talked in that documentary from those communities. It's like, yeah, it's exactly the ivory tower, everybody's bad but us. And we're so enlightened that therefore, you do it this way. Otherwise you're all in this other group of bad people. And I think that's horrible. Like, I want to hear some diversity of opinions, from communities that are actually affected by the way that they have to eat because, they don't have the infrastructure that we've spent 100 years building over here. That was my thing. Is there wasn't enough opinions from cultures that weren't just like first world countries. Did you guys get that same vibe or?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was like, from up here in our ivory tower where we live in an apartment and I'm shooting on $50,000 camera. I'm going to criticize people that live in third world countries that live in subsistence fishing villages that, basically what they do is wrong, and also stop putting plastics in the ocean and stop killing whales and dolphins too. And you guys are all evil and Sea Shepherd's awesome.
Yeah.
That stuff, it annoys me a little bit because it's like my grandpa is from a small little fishing village in the Philippines. Like that's how they made their money. He was, at 10 years old throwing nets to catch fish to then sell for pennies back in the day. It's like, I understand that, it's not like I lived it and did it myself, but that runs deep in my family. So it's like, I have that a little bit of insight that, those people aren't going to be the ones speaking up. They're the ones who are going to get shafted. If we kind of like say, oh yeah, let's close off all your coast so you can't go get fish or put regulations on you. And then it's like, now what? They have to go buy from companies to sell them the fish that they could have gone themselves. You know what I mean? It's like,
I felt I felt like a more responsible message would have been to just tell people to buy local. There's this ivory tower thinking, like a lot of the stats and the information they're sharing come from third world countries, and then we're applying it to the entire world's fishing efforts based on very small examples of poor management and things like that. But in most developing world countries, we've got very complicated and not 100% like awesome fisheries management processes, but like we've seen recoveries in some fishing populations. Like in Australia, you got the southern bluefin tuna. Like that fishery is booming now because of really good management practices. And this idea of, but our countries and our governments, they shutting down and creating marine parks and banning commercial fishing or severely restricting it, and then importing fish from third world countries. It's like, so we're not even allowing a market effect to work, like supply and demand, because if you reduce supply but the demand stays the same, the price goes up. So if we shopped local for seafood, the scarcity would mean higher prices. Commercial fishing people would get paid more money. We wouldn't be importing fish to our countries from these third world countries where they have very little management in place, and they're more inclined towards doing, practices that aren't going to be sustainable in the long term. I'm not here to just shit and piss all over third world countries either. I'm aware that, they have economic pressures and all the rest of it, but encouraging them to adopt good management practices is what we should be doing, like investing in their fisheries. If we're going to buy fish from third world countries, we should be teaching them about how to do it. And I also didn't like how the documentary just sort of spat all over and just diminished the efforts of some of the bodies that are trying to help provide accountability to some of the commercial fishing operations. I understand that they're fraught with failures. They talked about some of the observers getting thrown overboard but there were silly questions like, sorry, I'm going through several topics here at once, but one of the questions that really annoyed me was, so can you guarantee that not one dolphin was harmed on a fishing boat? And it's like the reality of commercially doing anything where you gather crops or animals, whatever it is for people for mass production, means that there's going to be other animals that are harmed in it. That's just common sense, I would have thought. But anyway.
Yeah, I'll talk to that a little bit. I mean, you're talking about even on land, right? When they're harvesting crops, so many small animals, small mammals, whatever it is, get killed when they're harvesting those crops on those big combines. Well, yeah, so there's always going to be so it's a catch-22. So the journalism, from a journalistic side, that was like poor at best. Like when he would go, and talk to these people, that's one of the notes I made was how antagonistic he was. As far as like, why are you killing everything? And then you expect the guy to respond to you with you know what I mean? Like, and so then you can paint him with a brush, say, look how evil he is because he's responded to me like an a-hole,
Refused to speak to me.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't talk to you either if you came to me like that, because it didn't seem like you had a real open mind about it, right? You're supposed to have an open mind about everything and come to your own conclusion based on facts, not why are you killing dolphins? Hold on, And one thing about the shark thing that was interesting when they talked about shark finning, and I think the gentleman was talking who got attacked by the bull shark in Sydney Harbor. He was talking about shark fin soup and how there was no nutritional value in it and the taste wasn't good. Well, a long, long time ago when I was in elementary school, I had a tutor, and part of the thing was we made shark fin soup. She happened to be Chinese. And I remember tasting it and thinking, it tasted pretty good. And then because he said that there was no nutritional value on it, I just Googled it. And it was 8 grams of protein. Like you say, and there's nothing wrong if there is nutritional value with it. But why do you say that? That's not necessarily true. And then what happens is now you've lost me because when there's a lot of facts to go off, I don't like the first world mentality like you're talking about. We talk about first world problems and traveling a lot through work and through the world and seeing people like Jon was talking about, like his grandfather, that really rely on fish for food. And they don't have a formal education or educated in general as far as how to manage their own reef. And if you help them with that, that would probably be huge to their community. And they could, not have to keep going out. But there's just a lot of things that were said that rubbed me the wrong way. Just, again, the message is good. I understand what they're trying to do. Awesome. But then on the flip side, I always have a problem with the solution, right? Which is like the solution is don't eat anything in the ocean. Okay, so then we turn all of our efforts to land. And then, now there's a vegan film about eating animals. So now we're not eating animals. So now we're clearing hundreds of thousands of acres so that we can grow corn or grow this or grow that. So like, where does it stop? You know what I mean?
I think their solution is just for us to die. When it comes down to it. It's just, it's
population control.
Yeah.
We are the virus.
But not them. Not them. They should, because they're, they've reached a new moral, like a higher plane of being. But the rest of us that eat fish and meat and whatever else, we should all die because we're just ignorant. And the world would be way better if it was just vegans. And
I think the thing is they paint us all with the same brush, right? Like they act like we're murderers of fish. And I know, and I can speak for my other friend too, every time I pull the trigger on a fish, it means something to me. I know, you've seen a fish, it looks at you, whatever, and you kill it. And you try to kill it quickly so it doesn't suffer. But the connection again with that food is I appreciate it far more than I did if I just bought it at a store. But the other thing is I am doing my part by going out and getting my own food. I shoot one fish and I come home and we might eat that, that 30-pound grouper I got. Well, I'm still eating that thing. And so, but to say like we don't care about animals. I love animals. Like my house is like a zoo, so I hate the getting painted with all of a sudden we're all looped in with commercial fishing.
Yeah.
And abusive commercial fishing.
But one thing probably a lot of spearfishing people don't realize is like I've seen Spearos with Sea Shepherd shirts on, and I don't have a massive problem with Sea Shepherd. Like some of the stuff they do, fantastic. And a lot of these green activist groups, some of the stuff they're doing has some merit, but they are fundamentally against all forms of fishing, all forms, recreational fishing, spearfishing, everything. They specifically list spearfishing as something that they're against. So just like be aware of that and be aware that they 100% disagree with our lifestyle of sustainably harvesting fish, even on our own terms. And even taking one, they still don't like the idea of it. And it's a classic example of, ivory tower thinking. The other thing I was going to say, and I wrote it down, it's Brandolini's law. It's also known as the bullshit asymmetry principle, which sort of comes about like if someone creates a false delivers a false fact, the order of difficulty needed to refute that is an order of difficulty greater, Like if someone says, like a classic one is like, 15% of this is that, and it's like, well, where do you get your numbers from? Oh, I read it somewhere, It's like, oh, cool. All right. So I'll just find your stat from wherever it is, and then I'll find, superior stats. And I think like this documentary, they muddy the waters. They confuse people. And they like to give you so much information that you can't deal with it on a stat-by-stat basis, like you said, and then they lump in other arguments. And it seems like, they've got one legitimate stat, so then they throw in three more with it, even though those stats aren't peer-reviewed research or anything like that. And I found this whole documentary was sort of fraught with that. Like they threw a lot of numbers, and I haven't even had time to go through even a quarter of them. Have you guys done much research into it?
A book that everybody should read is How to Lie with Statistics. It's a very short read, but it gives a lot of good examples of how you can just cherry pick whatever you need to do to fit a narrative. I mean, this is very classical in business and marketing. They do it all the time. So I agree with you. Like I think I remember reading an article where they kind of went through some of the studies that they picked from here, where they're like, 100% of the fish are going to be gone by 2048. And it's like, that was like one study that was refuted. Like it didn't have any citations. I think it was almost not even like a legit study, but it's easy to kind of, once you put it out there, like you said, now it gets propagated. And at the scale that we have now for communication, thanks to Netflix and YouTube and all of these different platforms, it's just a war. Everybody's just like lumping over agendas, and if you don't have a good enough argument that's polarizing for your own case, like you're going to get a herd mentality of like somebody's influenced propaganda. And then, if you're not vocal enough to fight back, you're screwed. Does that kind of make sense? It's like, that's my problem with like the fishing community is we have a lot of different anglers, and like there's commercial guys, recreational guys, there's Spearos, there's this and that. And we all kind of think, our own way is the better way. So then we're going to be fragmented. Whereas like a vegan agenda or whatever can say, fishing is bad. And it's like, they're going to win to a certain group of people versus us where we're like, oh, well, recreational is the only good way, or spearfishing is the only good way, or like commercial guys are bad. But, if we don't start kind of figuring out a way to band together and have a unified message, fishing is just not going to be a thing, in my opinion. Because they're already trying to do it with the 30-30 initiative, like 30% of coastlines and waterways need to be shut down from like all kind of fishing. And then they're trying to do 50-50 by 2050. So it's like all these things are going to happen. Like if we're not like kind of unified and figuring out how to influence for our own community, our kids aren't going to be fishing. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, it's good. And it's classic. It's Sun Tzu, isn't it? Divide and conquer. It's split us all up into our various sort of partisan groups and then make us fight each other. And the documentary does that. It tries to get us to all jump on a bandwagon against commercial fishing. And there's some practices in commercial fishing that are legitimately way, way, way past their use-by date. And, our ability now to use technology has given us some advantages over nature that we need to be 100% cognizant of when we plan management strategies. And yeah, so there's some, because there's validity to some of their arguments, we can all just start talking smack about commercial fishing, but there's success stories too. And I dislike the fact that the documentary just sort of was just completely negative about all of the management. Like one example was in Japan where they were talking about the Pacific bluefin tuna, which is, I think I can't remember the numbers, but they were saying they're down to, I think, 3% of their virgin biomass. And then they applied that same stat to all tuna everywhere. And it's like, well, okay, there's Pacific bluefin tuna in this area, there's Pacific bluefin tuna in this area. Those fisheries and their migration patterns and their spawning cycles are all different, and they're all managed different by different user groups in different countries and stuff like that. So, that it's like they're using a form of, cognitive bias, which relies on us hearing the stat from Pacific bluefin tuna and then hearing it loosely applied to all species. I just thought it was quite a primitive effort, I thought, to manipulate people. But if you're not aware of all of the different species of tuna and the different management practices in different parts of the world, then you're going to be influenced by that. So,
and that's what makes it difficult, because like you said, there's a lot to learn. Just in general, there's a lot of information, and every layer of information that you need to learn yourself is a friction point. So that's why I think, stories that are very simple, general, and that are emotional generally work best for influence. And it's like, you can't fight that with, look at such and such Latin name of the specific species that is really prevalent here, but not over here. And then somebody's just like, so it's a tuna. It's like, oh, the tunas are going to die. Okay, great. I get it. So we should probably just not fish. It's like every layer of complexity is mental energy. And I feel like you can't win that argument. Like it's not about facts per se. It's about influence. So I don't know. I'm just saying we kind of, maybe I always thought, you want to keep fishing, it's a marketing problem. Like we need to get some really good marketers up in our community and try and figure out messages that make the people who are going to be doing policies, like lobbyists or just the general public, see anglers and fishermen and spear fishermen as a necessity and a benefit to the world than a hindrance. And if we can't figure that, then, we're kind of screwed.
Are you in the market for a new spear gun? Killshot Spear Guns has got blue water wahoo tuna guns, open track spear guns, enclosed track spear guns, rear handle enclosed tracks. Check them out at killshotspearguns.com. Even better, I've got some good news for you. You can save $30 on any Killshot spear gun at killshotspearguns.com. Use the code NOOB. If you're in store, just say, crikey, mate, or say Shrek from the Noob Spearo sent you, and you'll save $30. Ed Martin at killshotspearguns.com. Check them out.
Hey Shrek, Jeremy here, man. I'm back. Just wanted to say the podcast is growing from strength to strength, my friend. Hoorah, man. I just wanted to say thank you for your continual support from the Noob Spearo listeners, subscribing, reading, writing, and submitting kick-ass spearfishing adventures from all over the planet. Your listeners kick ass, and Shrek, my friend, so do you. All you guys, come check out the next edition of Spearing Magazine at spearingmagazine.com. Jeremy out.
Let's talk about some of the different topics that they address in the Seaspiracy, because I felt like there were some legitimate areas that, I mean, we should all be concerned about. Like plastic was a huge issue that they sort of brought up, and it was kind of our gateway drug into the documentary. And they talked about how these plastics break down and become microplastics, and they enter sort of our ecosystem from every level of the food chain. And like I heard a lady on Joe Rogan podcast, like I think maybe a month ago, and she was talking about how, you know, our fertility as a broad spectrum society, like human fertility is dropping 1% every year in a linear fashion. And it has been doing so for the last 30 something years. And that may or may not be a good thing. But the fact is, she was attributing it to these microplastics, and they're having a huge impact on the world, on the planet as a whole. What did you guys think with regards to the plastics topic?
Well, for one thing, you know, when he was talking to the lady about 46% of the plastic island, you know, the patch out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean was fishing nets. And I thought that was kind of funny. I thought it was kind of loaded. And it kind of begged the question to me was that, have you been there? Like, have any of you that are all making all this stuff, have you actually been to that? I mean, because it very well could not even, it very well could not even exist. It could be just another propaganda thing. And I'm not saying it does or it doesn't. I believe that it does. But what my point is that you're commenting on something that you've never even been to. Mm-mm. And you're saying that, oh, it's all fishing nets. So therefore fishing is bad.
It seemed like a very specific number. I wonder where some of that research has came from. I can't imagine that
right.
Like some government funded thing. It sounds like another fringe group with a vested interest in presenting a specific type of information to the people that provide their funding. Because looking where the funding comes from and how their funding models operate helps you to understand some of the messages that they're sharing. And, you know, like plastics, you think, oh, okay, it'd be a relatively simple issue. Like, let's have a chat about, you know, which countries and cultures are generating, you know, the largest volumes of plastic. Not that disperses our own personal responsibility, but, you know, like actually having a good look at the problem. Do you think that 46% figure was just a figure that they threw out to provide that entry into starting to talk about the fishing?
I don't know. Well, based on the other statistics they threw out, I think if they actually threw out a number that they created, it would be like 99% or something much higher. Yeah. I really don't know. I have no idea where that number came from, but it sounds like a fair number. Again, I have no idea, but it seems like, if there is a number, I always beg like this question, how did you measure that? Did you take a sample size of, like, say, an acre of plastic that was out there, part of that patch, and you measured that and then applied that to the rest of it, like, and just times that whatever by, you know? So I don't know how they got that number, and I don't know if I've actually seen like data from it, right? And again, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a scientist, but I can Google things, and you know, if it is, I mean, plastic is a major problem, and I don't think anybody would dispute that. Now, however, is plastic all because of commercial fishing, or mostly because of commercial fishing, as they suggested? It's like, dude, come on, really? Like 46% of plastic is all due to commercial fishing. So it goes back to commercial fishing. It's like, that's a stretch for me.
I felt like during that section of the documentary, there's some really compelling storytelling that it helps you relate to him, which is what it was designed to do. He starts talking about how he cared about the oceans and its inhabitants, and then he started signing all these e-petitions and stuff, and then he started realizing that plastic's this huge problem, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to start cleaning my local beaches and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. Like if he was for real and that is actually what he did, I like people that connect action to, you know, the stimulus that they're receiving. You know, like if you see a problem, be part of the solution. I felt like that was probably the best part of the documentary for me, where he just became personally responsible for his own actions and did it. And I think most people should do that, because a lot of people just talk about shit and they never do stuff. And if it's connected to direct personal action where you take a greater responsibility for your own actions and within your own sphere of influence, then I think that's a huge thing. I don't know if it was legit or just another storytelling gimmick. Because after watching the whole documentary, you start to question whether he's honest about stuff or whether he's just telling a great big story, you know? Because, I mean, you know, and documentaries are really just someone telling you a story. Elements of it are probably not true. But when you get to the end and you've been subjected to all of this bias and propaganda for so long, you start to question all of it, which is kind of what you sort of said before.
Yeah, because I think, you know, people were suggesting that they placed the plastic next to the animals that were dead on the beach, and they put nets on the animals, which, you know what, it would not surprise me, because having, you know, like I said, dealt with issues in the world for, you know, in their mind, they're probably justifying what they're doing is it's the greater good. I totally understand that. I know a lot of people that have done do some bad shit for the greater good, and that's how they justify that. And again, I think the thing is that as far as there's always an underlying, for me, a little bit of respect for, you know, everybody involved in making that film, Ali and everybody else, because like you said, they went out and did it, right? That takes effort. And I think they're trying to do good. I just wish they didn't have to go as far as they did, because they lost a lot of people, and they might be more effective if they just were a little bit more honest or a little more gray area about solutions and things like that.
Yeah, I think plastics are a big problem. I think Bret was right when it comes to like, how did they measure the fishing, commercial fishing? I mean, if there are a lot of nets being wasted or just left out there after they've been used for a certain amount of time, that's a problem. You know, there's certain solutions that can be done regulating commercial vessels to make sure that they're compliant. I think that, you know, I know it's a very visual thing when they were saying they were throwing off the inspectors off boats, and I'm sure that's happened multiple times. You know, it's a money thing, right? Especially in different countries. I think plastics is a big problem, but it's also like who produced a lot of plastics. And it's like a lot of the times it's first world countries, and then they send these products without thinking about the full end of life of what happens at the end of the life of the product. And then, you know, they're not held accountable per se, you know, but then they're willing to say like, hey, look at all this problem in these other parts of the world, which you kind of had a stake in, you know, like plastics have been around for like 70 something years or whatever it is. But, you know, they came from generally first world countries and then shipped all over the world to make a profit. So like, I don't want to paint them all as like, I understand that people have to make a living, and they do a lot of good in terms of getting fish to the dinner plate to help feed people. But there are practices, and I think, like you said, like technology could be used better to make sure that everything is well managed. And, you know, certain practices like nets and long lining and dredging. I don't like dredging. I think dredging is bad, really bad. But like, do you guys want to comment on that a little bit?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
No, I agree with you. You know, like there's something to be said when we're out there running around spending all this money trying to shoot a stupid bluefin tuna, and you turn around and you know, our limit here in California is 2 a day, which it could be two a summer. That's about all I get, you know, which is fine. But you turn around and then there is a, you know, commercial boat with a plane and whatever, and a speedboat, and they're just scooped up the entire school over to the holding nets in Mexico, and they unload all the fish and then they grow them there. But the point is, it's like you just scooped up like a mile's worth of tuna, and then did that when here I am running around like an idiot trying to shoot one, you know, my buddies, and if we get one per boat, like we're good, you know. And so I don't necessarily know, you know, the bluefin is very sensitive. The bluefin is a sensitive fishery, and depending on where you're at. And with the explosion of everybody really into sushi, especially here, I mean, I could attest to that. I wouldn't eat raw fish. I thought that was bizarre until my wife got me involved in sushi. I was like, that's pretty good. But, you know, that's the whole, I'll never order, you know, toro unless I know where it comes from, or because I don't want to contribute to that. And like Jon said, I totally agree. These people are human beings that are trying to do what they got to do for their family. I live in a neighborhood full of them, commercial fishermen, and they're not bad people. We just have to be like, you know, the dolphin safe thing is kind of funny. When the dolphin safe thing happened here in the United States, you know what they did? They took all their vessels and they moved down to Samoa.
Yeah.
And so there, that didn't really fix anything, did it? Like just out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think there is some good ways of doing things when they used to do with poles, but I think the big problem is the supply and the demand. There's supply, but if we decrease the supply because we're educated on what's going on and what's, then we can make a decision, not having bluefin every time you go out or whatever it is. You can decrease that supply, which would then allow people to be able to do sustainable fishing practices without having to scoop up a mile of fish because everybody in San Diego wants sushi.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, it is a supply and demand thing. And I do support my local fishermen friends here that I know are going out, sitting out all night, fishing for white sea bass, trying to get it. And then they sell it to my friend's restaurant. So I totally get it.
Influencing public opinion so that you can influence demand on particular species is a huge problem. And I talked to Valentine Thomas about it ages ago. It's about how do you skew public opinion so that they desire or want to have more locally caught stuff, and particularly sustainable fisheries, like the all sharks are endangered argument and they're all like Bruce from, Finding Nemo. It's incredibly simplistic. And then, but all of a sudden, because of this influence, like the shark fin soup thing, we've been smashed with that vegan propaganda about sharks for probably at least 10 years. And that has heavily influenced our demand of shark. Like shark is not caught like it was, but even like the sustainable species, and there are a number of them, like we're not talking tiger sharks and great white sharks and things like that. I'm talking about school sharks and the other sustainable type fisheries. They no longer catch the same amount of fish of those species because no one wants to buy it. Consumers don't want to eat it anymore. But it hasn't really reduced the active numbers of the species that actually are vulnerable. And this is happening in first world countries. Where the sharks are at risk is in countries where they don't manage their fisheries as tightly. And it's bizarre. It's like we've got this anthropomorphism shaping demand, and it's not having the desired effect. It's just making the demand for sharks broadly go down. I think it's weird. And then we import fish from third world countries to make up the shortfall from these species that aren't managed on any level. It's just bizarre. But some of the solutions put forward are like, okay, well, how do we govern fishing at an international level? Because a lot of these fisheries are, they're not beholden to any country's laws because they're fishing in international waters, or they turn their transponders off overnight and then they head into marine sanctuaries and do whatever the hell they want. And that stuff does go on, And I don't know. What are some of the solutions? Have you guys thought about that?
Well, I know mahi, dorado, mahi is like one of the most sustainable fish. And it's also really, really delicious. Mm. So it's like, that's a targeted species where I think could be, be the poster child for sustainability, and people can feel good about eating it. And then that would release some of the pressure on other fish. But as far as like flying, like when you're getting fish from other countries, and I agree with you, it's a little weird because having been to a lot of those other countries, there is no thought as far as sustainability or anything like that. It's like, hey, we got to make money.
There's a reef. Let's do it.
Right. Like I know guys that go out at night. I don't know them personally, but I know of people and I've seen them go out at night on scuba and just decimate a reef. And to me, that, really pissed me off, quite honestly, because when you spend enough time on a reef and you dive it, like you get to know a lot of those local fish. That sounds kind of funny, but you're very protective of it. And to see people do that, like nothing can sustain that. Like it's not even, and then they're going and selling it and the next night they're back out again. And it's like over and over again. And it's like, you're not even leaving the reef. You're not even like going from one area to the next. Like maybe give that reef a break and go here. And the other side is like, are they killing enough of the fish to meet the demand, or are they killing enough of the fish because they're getting paid for it and the fish, half of them just go and rot somewhere?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't have any statistics. I don't know how much that is going on, but I think could be a lot of propaganda done for the sustainable fish. And there could be a lot of propaganda done for eat local, like you're saying, because it does impact people in your neighborhood, people that are doing it right. And they don't have to get as many fish to support a smaller dynamic. Like in Point Loma, the commercial fishermen that go out, and go to catch sea bass they don't have to provide enough sea bass to ship it to Florida. They don't have to do all, they can just locally get here and hopefully, I'm not a commercial fisherman, and hopefully get enough here to where they're doing well. And you know what? If you got to subsidize them, subsidize them. We subsidize a lot of other things. Why not, help out like how we help out farmers? Why not help out fishermen? And I know some of them are heavily subsidized up in the salmon fishery up north in Oregon and Washington. They get paid to not fish, which is maybe, is not necessarily a bad thing.
There was criticism in the documentary leveled against subsidizing any form of fishing because they believe it's you're paying for the long-term detrimental impact of these fishing people on our environment. By sending them any money at all or helping them or incentivizing any action, you're contributing, basically. That was kind of one of the arguments. Did you pick up on that, John? Or
Yeah, that's a complicated situation on that one. I don't really have a good answer to that. I do understand that it's kind of a tragedy of the commons. I think we kind of experience a form of what happens when the water runs out, for example, in California with like the almond farmers. Like, do you band together and kind of look at the problem as a community and figure out a best way to manage it so that everybody wins? Or do you just say, I have access to this well, I'm going to take the last gallon because I need to make the money for myself? I feel like fishing is kind of a little bit similar, where it's kind of a finite resource that, everybody has to pull from, but everything is sectioned off and fragmented to where it's like, if I don't go myself and grab the fish and sell it, then my family can't eat. But in reality, it's like there has to be this like hybridization of, that's why we have a government, is to figure out ways in which to throw money in certain ways that the end result benefits the entire group. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm just like, it's a very complicated problem. And that's why I think the simplicity of the messages, it's easier for people to understand, where it's just like, don't fish, or fishing is bad. So then you don't even have to look at all the different use cases or the different, levers. You change this lever, it affects this group of people, they get mad and all this stuff. It's just easier to say ban it or something, or don't do it, it's bad. So I don't have a good answer on that one, to be honest.
If your buddy had a blackout on your next spearfishing trip, think, what would the outcome of that be? Do you know how to revive someone from a blackout? Would you even be in a position to do something about it? Or would you be diving, chasing after a fish as your buddy sinks down to the bottom of the ocean? Do you know where most blackouts happen? Do you know what you can do to minimize your risk of having a blackout? My name is Ted Hardy, and I'm the founder of freedivingsafety.com. In my free online course, you will learn the truth about shallow water blackout, the myth of, I don't push myself, I know my limits, I'm in tune with my body, how to minimize your risk of having a blackout, and most importantly, how to save your buddy's life if they have one. Visit freedivingsafety.com to sign up for your free course today. Dive safe out there. It's not even that hard.
I think it was a good answer. I think, we're back to talking about ivory tower people though. Like, there's subsistence communities that live primarily on fish. Like, fish makes up a huge part of my diet. Like, the spearfishing lifestyle is all about catching your own food, like from ocean to bringing it home and preparing something special. And I guess the consistent thread, the narrative throughout the documentary runs counter to that. Not all of the time, but all of the issues they point to were linked up to the narrative. Some of the issues I agree with, and I would love to see some solutions put forward towards them, but I can't connect, their conclusions to some of these issues. One of the other things they talked about, and you talked about it just before, was longliners. And there was a journalist who said longliners put out enough line to go around the world 500 times every day. I was like, I don't even understand how that could be statistically possible. Please enlighten me if you guys have a different idea about this.
I picked up on that exact same thing. And I was trying to do some math, and I stopped because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Are you that just doesn't make any sense. I would love to see the statistics and the works cited and go look it up myself. But again, they threw this number out, and I was waiting for them to say like every year, and they said every day. And I just immediately was like, all right, hold on. It didn't, if it's true, maybe there is. It depends how they cherry pick the data, right? It depends how they got the data. Are they talking about they took a collection from 1950 or from the last? Who knows? I don't know. And they were talking about the same kind of thing with the commercial fishing fleet. How many commercial boats? There's like 4,000 and
no, there's 450 million fishing.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one. And my question about 4 million. And my thing with that was like, what are you including as commercial fishing boat? Because you definitely aren't going off licenses.
Well, you can fish out of a kayak, so maybe they counted kayaks in that.
So that's what I'm saying. Like they probably look at every boat. Every country has so many pangas or whatever. And again, how did you get that data? Dude, there's no way you got that data accurately. That's the only thing. Like, I don't know how you can do that accurately. I've been to a lot of, my work takes me to a lot of countries along the coast. And you see all these commercial, I don't even want to say commercial. They're just fishermen, very poor fishermen. And if you include, you'd have to go on Google Earth and look at and frame the entire coastline of the world and start counting. And you're telling me you got to 4 million and something? That guy must have a lot of free time. I don't know.
Do you guys know any rich fishing people?
Yeah. Well, I know guys back in the 80s, a lot of the Portuguese here that own the boats.
Yep.
When they own the boats and they went out for the tuna fishery in the 80s, they did really well for themselves. Depends on what you define as rich, though, too, also. You know what I mean? But I know they work their ass off.
Yeah, well, working your ass off for 30 or 40 years to steadily buy, I don't know, like everyone does it. Yeah, I don't know. It's our measurements for wealth are fairly crude, but if you work your ass off for 30 years, you'd expect to own your own fishing boat and maybe another one. I don't know if that's unreasonable, though, because according to the conclusions of this documentary, you've made it at the expense of the oceans. And that'd be the way they would define it, wouldn't it?
So here's where I'm at. So this is a personal thing. I used to work with one of the guys that's the first mate on the Sea Shepherd. I'm not going to mention any names, on one of the Sea Shepherd's boats, right?
Yeah.
Now, and I'll just be honest, he was a trust fund kid and he got fired because he was on his dad's yacht and there was a bunch of cocaine. Somebody fell off and died. And you go over to his house and it's like, it's time to go because all these dudes are rich and they're doing a mountain of cocaine right here. And I can't afford an attorney. I need to get the fuck out of here. And so he got fired. And what he ended up doing was moving to Hawaii, bought a huge 50-foot catamaran and started doing whale tours. Hey, to each his own, no problem with any of that. Everybody's got their own path. It's all good. But next thing I know, you see him on Whale Wars. And he's talking, again, ivory tower kind of stuff. And it's like, dude, you've never had to scrounge a day in your life for money, for anything like that. And a lot of those people that are working for free as interns and volunteering, I don't know many people that can volunteer for months on end and their early 20s or whatever, that, the people that I know, you're getting a sector of society that may not understand what it's really like to be broke. Everybody's version of broke is something different, but I can tell you, I know what mine is and I know what somebody else, when first world problems, right? And then you go to somewhere else and it's like, they're trying just to make sure they can eat tonight, get some rice. So you see that group of people and these group of people are speaking for all these other group of people that they don't even know anything about. They haven't even taken the time to go there and meet. They go over there and they go, hey, why are you killing everybody? Like in the movie, I'm kind of getting fired up here, but in the movie, they were acting like when they were spying on them offloading the bluefin tuna, they acted like they were smuggling drugs.
100%.
And I was like, this is so
There's
bad.
a lot of showmanship there. The police are following us and there's who knows? I've been to Japan, that's a country that loves fish 100%. And they are definitely a country that would need to use regulation to curb and manage demand and manage their fisheries appropriately. But after traveling there for a week and a half, their oceans are beautiful, pristine. I was living in China and traveling to Japan, and the way they manage litter and waste, and they'd have to be at the top of the leading the world for the way they manage their waste and wastewater and things like that. The water's pristine, and it seems like, I'm not saying all their fisheries are vibrant, but some of them are. There is a really sad and tragic part about the exaggerated demand on Pacific bluefin tuna. Like that is where, obviously an area where it looks like that they need to provide a lot more hefty regulation. And this is the reality of managing a fishery. Like that's a government's job to do that. But that'd be a tough pill and a bitter pill to put through the government when, there's so much demand for it in your population. So it's not without problems, but jeepers, it's better than some of the other countries I've been to, that's for sure.
Oh, 100%. And then the other thing is, like, I do agree with them with the Cusco, whatever, the mafia and the unions. They run that area. They do. And it is about money, which is why they have very unique fishing rules there as far as being in the union in order to the fishing union or co-op in order to even fish. And spearfishing is a very different thing too. But
spearfishing is illegal largely in Japan, which is bizarre. And you do so illegally when you do choose to spearfish in Japan. But there are quite a few Japanese Spearos. Have you talked to any?
Yes, I have. And there's a couple of areas there that are unbelievable. And I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to give away anybody's spots. But I'll say, like, there is a healthy population of fish. But I also agree with those with the documentary of bluefin tuna. It needs to be managed. 100% agree with them on that. But I just,
it's where documentaries like this can have a powerful effect. Like if it was made in Japanese and it was about the fishery and how under threat it is and how this inflated demand is creating this awful problem in that particular fishery in that particular part of the world, and how the country need to be a bit more courageous in confronting it so that they preserve those fish stocks into the future. If you're down to sub 5% virgin biomass, then something dramatic needs to change, I think. But I don't know. That's just my couch surfing claim in a different part of the world and in a different cultural context. So, but yeah, there was a lot of language and hyperbole that I equate to propaganda. We're at war with the oceans, and there's a war on. What was it? There's some bullshit at the start. I can't even remember. And then another guy says, Captain Paul Watson says, there's no such thing as a sustainable fishery. And that's when you start to realize, like, I see what they're doing here. Like, there's no.
Yeah, I got to comment on that real quick. And the only reason why I'm calling absolute bullshit on that is if that was true, then there would be no Polynesians. There would be nobody on any Pacific Islander. There would be nobody on there because they wouldn't be able to sustain, the reef that they're fishing, the local reefs that they're fishing. They just wouldn't exist. There'd be a lot of Filipino villages that wouldn't be around. There'd be a lot of Asian little countries that wouldn't be around if that wasn't true. And Paul Watson, he doesn't like Spearos. And it's funny because, you know what, I guarantee you, like, he made his whole living off his agenda. And that's what it is for him. And part of me is like, okay, I don't really care for him very much. And I guess the part of it is you could do so much good. Those guys could do so much good. Exactly what you're talking about as far as, making it in Japanese documentary. You get Japanese people to make a Japanese documentary and people will listen. Nobody wants to listen to a white dude talking to another country in their ivory tower talking down, and they're just not going to listen,
Same with the Faroese situation, like the dolphins that they were doing there in Taiji. Like, it's very hard to speak into another person's culture about what they are doing or not doing. One thing I wanted to get back to is the dispersion of responsibility. Like I said, like at the start, I liked it because he was like, I'm online, I'm signing all these e-petitions, and I'm donating to my Greenpeace or whatever it is, PETA or any of these type of organizations. It's a dispersion of personal responsibility. What you're doing is you're saying, well, you know what I'm doing about it? I'm going to sign an e-petition and I'm going to donate $100 to whatever. And then because of that, it means that I've kind of like paid for good karma. And and these businesses, these charitable businesses, are cashing in on people's guilt. It's like I feel a sense of responsibility. So instead of actually being responsible and making better choices and actually doing stuff, I'm going to pay money to people that will do that for me. It's like back in the day, people used to pay the Roman Catholic Church money for their sins so that they could go out and they could do some sins. It's the same thing. It's just the modern day equivalent. It's like, I'm going to pay this fringe green group some money so that I can go out and just eat as much tuna on my Subway sandwiches I want without having to worry about where that fish came from.
I agree with you. I think paying for the guilt to go away without actually getting a lot done is easier. It all comes down to lower friction. I think what's crazy to me is that a lot of change can happen if we just banded together and use that same amount of money in our community to pay lobbyists for our own agenda to kind of, and then have a really clear plan. Because I think a lot of us just kind of do our own thing and hope for the best and then get mad when things don't go our way. I think we just need to have some leaders who are really in the community kind of start stepping up and kind of organizing, and we kind of band together. And because there's obviously a lot of heated stuff right now just between us three, and I'm pretty sure probably propagates throughout the whole community. I think that we can do a lot with our own dollars, with our own actions, versus just pay and pray that something good will happen, with somebody else to do something for us.
Yeah. I mean, I used to donate, to Greenpeace and all that stuff when I was young. And, when I was 22 and, and it was like, hey, I really want to help the rainforest. How can I do that? I can't get on a plane and fly to the rainforest and do that. Okay, I'm going to give money. These guys are going to do it on my behalf. But then it's and I encourage people to look at what those people made, the CEOs of those companies or whatever, these nonprofits, these people are cashing in. So, do they do good? I'm sure they do good. But it's just important to remember that really, when you look at it from the top down, it is about making money. And if there's no issue, then there's no money to be made. It's like they say the war on drugs, right? If the war on drugs in America, it creates a lot of jobs, right? And they say, oh, the war on drugs is bullshit. Just make all drugs legal. And then and then that's it, right? But the bottom line is it is funded by people who are making a lot of money off these issues. So you create an issue, you can fabricate your own issue, be the spearhead of the one that does it. And then people most people love the environment and care about it. And so they're going to give you money to fight on their behalf. I think, there's an old thing saying my friend would say, I think it was Gandhi that said this, if you want to or maybe it was Yogananda, if you want to start world peace, then everyone, you could do world peace right now. The secret would be everybody take care of yourself. Yeah. Everybody take care of your own self. And then we'll have world peace, because you can control. The only thing you can control is your own household, which, that mainly yourself, but you can only do so much in your own household, but you can control your own household. But what Jon said is if nobody is really aware of these issues and you can't, you can't take your own belief system where everybody has the same belief system in the same house and bring it individually up and take care of your own self against people that are united. We are divided among fishermen. We are divided among people in general. And I do think that the vast majority of us want to do good things for the environment. And I think that if we had an avenue, and some people would say, well, that's PETA and that's Greenpeace. But I think those organizations got so big and I think they got really watered down with their messages. And I respect everybody trying to do the right thing. And I'm not shitting on anybody for their own thing. And again, this is just my opinion. But if everybody kind of took care of their local issues more and rallied up on their local issues, they could really do a lot of good. Because like you're saying, Shrek, it's really hard to tell people over in the Persian Gulf that they're doing things wrong when they're sleeping in a hut on the floor, just trying to get enough fish to be able to sell it so they can eat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've done a fair bit of reading about this and I've watched the documentary, and I know you guys have too, because, we're all in this space and we all love fish and fishing. And so Seaspiracy was always going to come on all of our radar. I want to encourage people to go to any of our websites today. So castandspear.com, spearfactor.com or noobspearo.com. And we'll all probably have a version of show notes up and it'll have some articles linked up, just stuff that we've all found valuable. There was a massive conversation on the Noob Spearo community that I wanted to just give a couple of shout outs to. Like Ben Vittino sort of brought it to the attention of the community. He said, "Hey Noobers, anyone else watch Seaspiracy? I watched it tonight. Certainly some eye-opening stuff. Reaffirms a lot of what made me want to start catching my own food in the first place. What do you think?" And there was really good, robust conversation on there. A lot of stuff, a lot of just good, robust conversation. I think it's good. Like, obviously, this documentary pointed out a lot of different issues. If I've sounded like I'm overly angry about some of them, it's more just because of the overarching narrative of the documentary is one of propaganda, and it's actually an anti-spearfishing message. And that's kind of what gets me fired up, and probably why I take less of a devil's advocate position with it. But some of the points, plastics in our oceans, like, of course, all of us are probably on the same page with that, overfishing and bad commercial fishing practices. Of course, we're all against that, piracy and detaining people of their liberty and forcing them to fish, who's clapping, going, yeah, none of us are on board with that. Like,
killing whales, right? That's another kind of an issue, right? When they're killing the whales, there's a lot of that. I like just to bring that up though, because the killing the whale thing is kind of interesting because there's groups that have historically done that out of cultural things, right? Mm-hmm. Cultural reasons. And then there's commercial fishing of whales.
Yep.
And where it gets really tricky too is you're talking about higher level of mammals. So now that, like, from I've worked with them, that, they can reason and think, and it gets a little weird. And I just wanted to see what your guys' thoughts was on that portion of the film, because they're not supposed to commercial whaling, but they have that, the loophole for research. And I think everybody knows that it's bullshit. Right? They're shooting all these whales like it's for research. Like, sure, bro. And I think that's the issue that people have with it, not necessarily, the cinematography, right? The visions of whales, nobody enjoys that. It's terrible. Just like deer hunting, right? Seeing an animal bleed out, nobody's gonna enjoy that, right? I don't think anybody that hunts really enjoys that. But it definitely creates a conversation.
That's part of being connected to it. Like when you hunt terrestrial animals, like and fish too. But I think to a lesser extent, just because of the way we prioritize and rank animals in our own minds, and it's based on cultural context and the way we perceive the world around us, and this whole thing we call hunting. But like I don't enjoy the kill moment, but I think it's part of it about being intentional towards your food, and it's accepting the reality that something must die in order for me to carry on and feed my family. And we're just connected to the reality of it, and we don't deny it. Whereas people that want to buy things off a shelf in a supermarket are quite happy to allow that reality to be someone else's problem. And whereas we're just intentional about how we do it. And if you do care about what you kill, then you're not going to overkill everything. Some people's consciences are seared and they don't care what they kill, where they kill, or how much they kill, but I deal with those people in my professional job every day. But I think spearfishing makes you more intentional towards it because you become aware of it. If you've practiced any form of hunting and you're directly connected to that activity, then it takes on a different reality, and you just accept the cost of it. You accept the fact that, I'm going to kill something today. That's your reality. And it's not that you enjoy it. It's just something that you accept and you don't take it for granted, I think. But yeah, like looking at whales and dolphins get slaughtered, man, like because of where I grew up, like New Zealand's very progressive in a lot of ways. I'm disconnected from the reality of having to do that for food. And whales and dolphins have never been part of my diet. So I have a moral problem with me personally being involved with it. But having said that, I didn't grow up in these cultures where they do that. So I admit that I have a level of thinking that, is not I don't understand it. I don't live there. I didn't grow up in it. If I did, maybe I would have a different idea about it. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
I'm in the same camp. I think it's not my culture. So I feel like me speaking upon it, I have my own personal, emotional, when I see it, I don't like to see it. I think they're pretty high on the animal hierarchy. And, at some point in the 21st or in 2021, can we get those cultures, good quality meat shipped around the world? Yeah, but I don't think they're doing it for that reason. I think they're doing it because it's part of their tradition. And some traditions, they're going to keep going for the community, and some might go away over time with education. It's like not always will the next generation in those groups be wanting to do that, and I think with the internet and being connected, it doesn't take much to influence those newer generations on, say, like a YouTube or something, to be like, maybe that's not the same way we should do it. Like, I don't know. I think it's, I don't want to speak on it because then I'll be hypocritical, right? It's, I think teach their own. And to me personally, I just don't like to see it. I like whales and dolphins.
oldmanblue.com.au. The people at Old Man Blue absolutely froth on the spearing life. They intentionally make super hard wearing and super practical gear that will stand the test of time. Visit them at oldmanblue.com.au. They continue to develop new products. But if you want a lobster bag that will stand the test of time, visit oldmanblue.com.au. If you want a bridle insertion tool, visit oldmanblue.com.au. If you want a fish stringer, a shark clip, a lobster loop that will perform and last, visit oldmanblue.com.au.
I'm in the same boat. Yeah, right.
Oh, that's it. Like, it's like I like whales and dolphins, so I don't want to kill them and I don't want to watch it. That's pretty.
No, it's so true.
But to sit in judgment on someone else and their activities like that, like I'm all about personal responsibility. Like you do, you're responsible for it. Act in accordance with the moral framework that's on your life. And if it's out of line, that's definitely something we need to look at. But if an entire culture is doing something, then who am I to sit back? Well, I don't know. It comes down to cultural imperialism and some of these bigger arguments, doesn't it?
Well, it's like, cows, right? Like we eat cows all the time, but I guess, cows are holy, sacred animal in other countries. And so they might look at us as like, what are you doing? So it is hard, you got to take care of your own backyard first, right? But I think, again, like where the issue is that there's laws that were passed saying if you're going to, kill an animal, it's got to be for this. And then apparently they're saying they're killing it for this, but it's sold in stores. And I think that's the issue for those people.
There was an international treaty that they saw that the world sort of signed onto and said, we will no longer kill whales and dolphins, except for the purposes of science and blah, blah, blah. But Japan officially withdrew from that accord, so they no longer belong to it. I don't think the people in the Faroese Islands ever agreed to it or signed on to it. And,
so they're good.
There's pockets of Indigenous people that just do what they do, like there's an island just off Brisbane, and they killed dugongs, which is the sea cows, manatee type things. But they take one or two a year, and they believe that the oil that they get is medicinal properties, and they also kill turtles. Turtles are another sacred cow. Sorry, excuse the reference to what you were just talking about. But, and culturally to us, like eating a turtle, it's like, I like turtles, again, it's like, I like turtles, but who am I to say it's wrong to do? Because, turtles, according to one of the people in this, like 6 out of the 7 species of seagoing turtles are on the verge of extinction. So, I don't know. There's a discussion to be had there, but it's culturally relevant, isn't it?
Yeah, you said they were threatened. And that's where I kind of got off on that topic of like, as soon as he said that, I was like, it reminds me of when I was at the zoo and every animal at the zoo was threatened, right? Yeah, so, and the other big thing is, growing up, you see all these animals and they're all cute, right? Like rabbits are cute. To kill a rabbit for food, like my kids would probably disown me, But in other places, and I've done it, like, they're pretty good to eat.
My last housemate was Colombian, and he was a vegetarian. His name was Rodolfo. Really, really awesome bloke. Moved in, I thought, how the hell is this going to work? Like, I love meat and fish, and I've got this vegetarian guy moving in, and he was just an absolute gentleman. Like, and I found out later when we became good friends that his father had killed his pet rabbit when he was a child. The rabbit's name was Pepito, and his father killed the rabbit in front of him and fed the family with it. And after that, he decided, and he did it. He became a vegetarian for the rest of his life. And I'm glad your kids aren't vegetarians yet.
Yeah, it's a key word. Yeah, that it's like what you were saying. I come home with the fish. And, my daughter and my daughters, my kids, I'll run out. They want to see what you got, and I brought on not really nice mahi one day, and they're like, "Oh, it's a beautiful fish, Dad. You shouldn't have killed it.
Yeah.
But then you eat it and they're like, "Oh, okay. I don't want you to kill any more of those, Dad." I'm like, "Okay, I won't. Yeah, we'll see." But my wife would disagree with that. But yeah.
Yeah, they're beautiful, but and people connect that beauty with like, "Oh, I like it. I don't want to kill it." But then, like one of the first species you learn about if you've got mahi in your area is that super fast growing, fecund, like not really commercially harvested in any way. And they're a great species to spearfish because of that. And we like them, but they're beautiful and we kill them. And that's the reality of what we do. Like the documentary, Ali, he says, I finally knew what sustainability meant. It means that something can go on and continue forever, regardless of how much suffering it causes. I then began to wonder if sustainability was the right goal. And I think that was probably a bit more honest. It was he was questioning just the reality of killing stuff to live. And I think that was really where he was going with the documentary the whole way. And that was kind of the conclusion of the documentary is like, don't eat fish. Incredibly simplistic and wonderful and just not a reality for most of the world's population. So, but at least he was honest there at the end. I thought he was battling with ideas of just basic morality, just like most 22-year-olds do when they're coming to terms with the world around them. But whether you're a vegan and you eat spinach all day and leaves, you're still killing stuff. That's the reality of being alive. Because, agriculture's got just as many issues as commercial fishing does, if not more. And they're probably better understood in a lot of ways because terrestrial farming has been more studied than the oceans have. The oceans have really been open to more rigorous study for the last 50 years or so, whereas farming's, you could argue, has been going a bit longer than that. But yeah, I just, it was an interesting thing. I didn't really connect it with his age like you did, Bret.
I feel like there's always going to be some kind of moral guilt no matter what, right? And that's what, like, we're all kind of just projecting, so-and-so over there is worse than me, even though if you're on this planet, you have some kind of effect on it, right? And I think a lot of people just don't want to just admit that there is some kind of engagement, something must go down if something goes up, if something dies, something else has to live. And I think a lot of people, that kind of thought process you're not able to comprehend it. So it's like, okay, that group of people is worse. Let's like feel better by saying that they're worse off than me. And I think that's the problem right now. It's like, it's just ideologies and like a dispersion of guilt and blame. So I think we all just got to realize that, we're all on this planet. We need to figure out how to work together to keep as many of the species and things going in a positive trend, in a better light, and that's better education, better management, better a lot of everything. Like, there's a lot of improvement. We should always be thinking about how can we all improve ourselves, and then through improving ourselves, improve our communities and go up the chain. There's a lot of room for improvement. I think we just got to kind of work together as a species.
John, you say it like such a gentleman. You're making us look bad.
Down there at Maha, Bret, he's all zen and stuff. He's just like a yogi, freediving yogi.
I'm just looking at the beautiful winery vineyards over here, and I'm just like, it's just beautiful. Everything's beautiful, but we all matter. We all need to figure this out together, not hate each other, and not.
I think too, like what you're saying is, I also appreciated what he said at the end. And I have friends that I know are vegan, and they're vegan for the sake of they don't like killing animals. And for whatever reason, that's fine. That's your thing. Then you know what? God bless you. And that's okay. But for us spear fishermen now, it doesn't make us like Satan. Because there are plenty of bad people out there.
And women fish too.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's all good. It's all good.
Sorry. Apologize. There's a lot of badass women out there. If
the men have to be Satan, then they have to as well. So
yeah, she devils, I guess. But I mean, there's so I get where everybody's coming from, and everybody, like you said, has their own moral code, and that's good. You should be an individual and have your own moral code. I think the problem that we get in today's society is always bastard, like because people think or do things differently than then they're wrong, right? You can apply this to anything. And I always and I strongly agree with it. I strongly think this, like there's an element of truth, someone that could have a different political perspective than you do. And that political perspective could be because of their experiences. Everybody has their own experiences in life, and it shapes their own opinion. That doesn't mean they're wrong. They could be very, very right for the things that they've experienced. Just like for us, or, for me, I have a different perspective because I have a different, course through my life than some people. And I've had different things happen to me. So I have a different perspective that might be a little bit like this. The point is, though, I think everybody's trying to get to the same spot, like I said before. And because we all have different, influences and things that happen in our life, we're like, well, no, you're going to get this way. Otherwise, you're going to lose this, or you're going to get this way because, but the bottom line is, if everybody, we got to be united. And there's a lot of people that make a lot of money off keeping us separated. So that, like you said, it's that principle, right? Divide, and then you're going to just control, and I don't know whoever that is. I don't know the powers that be, maybe someone, whatever it is. The point is, if we all give a shit about the environment, we all do. We just have different ways of applying that care and love towards the environment. Some people don't understand how you could love something and then kill it. I totally get that. Totally get that. And then other people are like, yeah, I have no problem with that, like we do. But so it's just very different. The bottom line is having respect for everybody's opinions. And I think what happens is when you feel like your opinion and your side is not getting respected because you're kind of getting demonized, that's when your hackles come up, right? And that's when you stop listening. And then that's when you just go on usually defensive mode, which is kind of, in a way, probably what's happening here a little bit. But
well, that's from my point of view anyway.
For sure. But I love the fact that they have an opinion. I love the fact that they came up with it, and he came up with it. And like you said, he had a problem and he tried to have a solution, and he buckled down and made a film and did something with it. You know what? That's awesome. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that doesn't mean that he's wrong and I'm right.
It's a good thought to end on, I think, Bret. We've had a massive conversation today. So Bret's at Spearfactor on Instagram. Is that right? At Spearfactor, one word?
Spearfactor, yeah, Spearfactor, one word.
Cool. And Jon is at Carsten Spear, also on Instagram, Jon?
Yep, on all the platforms.
It's the Spearfactor, the _. Spearfactor.
Yeah,
I don't even know my own shit.
An article in there, sure.
Yeah.
I think
Dude, this was fun, guys. Yeah. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for putting this together, Shrek. You really are a legend, man. Really do appreciate your time.
Oh, good. Thanks, guys. Well, let's end on that note.
Yeah, you do much for the community. Thanks, Shrek.
Don't be dicks was the message, I think. Just
be polite.
Be polite. All right, guys. I'll catch you later.
Okay.
Take care.
See you, Jon.
Bye.
Bye, Shrek.
Massive conversation today, guys. Really want to just thank Jon at Carsten the Spear and Bret Whitman from Spearfactor for coming and join me. I apologise if it was a little bit negative today. It's never my intent to do so. However, this documentary stands really against a lot of the values that we hold dear as Spearos. And I'm not sure if you share my opinions, and that's fine if you don't. I would encourage you to take part in the broader conversation on the Noob Spearo community on Facebook. And come and have your say. I'll have a new post up there when this episode goes live, and I'd love to hear about what your thoughts were on it. Again, massive thanks to Bret, Spearfactor, and Jon at Carsten the Spear. Check out their podcasts if you can. If you love the Noob Spearo podcast, I'd love it if you left us a review, and if you just froth on it, like more than 40 others do, become a patron listener at patreon.com/Noob Spearo. Every single dollar earned through Patreon is used to fund trips where I get to come out and go diving with listeners, interview legends, and basically dive a different part of the world for myself. And I really love it. Thanks for listening. Next week, we're off to chat with the wet mammal, Sam Clothier. Boom. Adreno stock all the equipment noobers need for freediving and spearfishing. The Adreno spearfishing team will help and advise you about equipment, diving, trips, dive locations for Spearos and aspiring Spearos of all levels of experience. Visit them in store or chat to one of their friendly team members. They've got stores in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Perth, and there's a new one on the way. Also, don't forget to take advantage of the Noob Spearo discount code and save $20 on every purchase over $200. That's right, you can now use the code Noob Spearo in store. Yeah.
Recently, I bought some new equipment online at today's show sponsor, Neptonics.com, and I was super impressed by the quality of the packaging and the before and after sales support. These guys don't muck around. They make awesome, tough, dependable equipment, and their service matches the quality of the equipment they sell. Visit Neptonics.com, use the code NOOB10 to save 10% on anything and everything store-wide. If you're shopping in the USA and you spend more than $99, you get free shipping at Neptonics.com.